For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.
Hello, welcome to For the Young at Heart. I'm Lucille Jerome. On today's program, we're going to be taking a look at caregiving of our parents, maybe grandparents, maybe siblings. And we'll take a specific look at caregiving at a distance. My guest today is an expert in this, and her name is Carol Richard. Cindy Richard. Oh my heavens, Cindy Richard. And she's the elder care specialist at Elder Services of Merrimack Valley. She focuses on caregiving issues, so we're going to learn a lot today. I'm sorry, Cindy.
That's okay. Thanks, Lucille.
Thank you for
Carol's
coming.
a beautiful name, too.
It's a beautiful name. And thank you for making time today for this.
Oh,
Such
thank
an
you.
important topic. Why don't you describe a little bit about your program before we go into a little bit more specifics?
Sure. So I work out of the Family Caregiver Support Program at Elder Services. And we're actually a little-known program that little known, meaning there's usually only one or two of us in the program, but we cover a lot. We're also a program that's funded by the Older Americans Act, and it is a program that every state has, and not many people know this. It was originally set in place by an act of Congress in the 1990s. The Family Caregiver Act was signed, and it's been signed by it was signed originally by President Clinton, and then it's been signed by every president since. And it really is, our program is set up to recognize caregivers and to try and give them a space and to be able to get information and support for themselves while they're doing this.
Right. There's so many needs that have to be met or try to be met.
Yes.
So thanks to the program. And November is National Caregivers Month, isn't it?
November is National
November.
Caregivers Month, yes. And so we really do want to let caregivers know that there is support available. Sometimes it's so hard to navigate all the different systems and to understand. So through our program, really people are eligible if they're a caregiver. It really comes down to that. If they're caring for somebody that is over the age of 60, they can be of any age. Or if they're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia, they can be of any age. There is an age limitation if they're caring for somebody under the age of 60. But even with that, when they call our program, so they do have to be 55 if they're caring for somebody under the age of 60 that has a disability or an illness. But even when they call our program for support, we will try to get them help.
Of course you will. Of course you will.
No matter what. So, and we also work with grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. Which is
there's so many different variables here, and sometimes say we have someone who might be 60-ish or a little older, and they might be dealing with their parent who's still alive, but they might also have a sibling close in age that needs some help too, or a spouse. So there's multiple dimensions that are possible here.
There are. And typically the average age for most caregivers that I work with is just about 60.
Really?
It is between late 50s, early 60s. There are many men that do this, but primarily it's been women still. And they're really in a place that they just need to find out. When they contact us, they want to see what's available. They're many times very stressed. They need to know what support groups are available in the area. what programs can support them, what the eligibility is for different programs.
Sure.
And it gets very overwhelming if you don't have someone that can give you that information.
Right. So that's like a first step. A first
Exactly.
step, a first good step.
Exactly.
Because they might be listening to neighbors and getting misinformation. That happens too.
It does. It does. And people are well-intentioned, but they're not
Yes.
always, it's hard to speak to friends and family often because they have their own things
Right.
that they've been through,
Right.
and it may not be what fits for your own circumstance.
That's true. And everyone has their own ideas about what's needed or what's necessary. Or what
Exactly.
you need to do.
Exactly. So
Okay, yeah.
that's where it is nice to have a separate space. When
Yes.
when a caregiver does call our program, I can actually go out and meet with them directly. I don't have to meet the person being cared for, which is nice because sometimes that just frees them from that stress.
Right.
And I often meet people at their home, but if that doesn't work for them, I can meet them at a place like a library, a study room in a library. They can come to our office.
Okay, yeah. Let's just suppose that maybe the elder that they're trying to provide caregiving to says, I don't need any help.
So for our program, the caregiver's still eligible, and we work with them on ways that they can, it's to help them understand, you don't want to come in with doing everything for that person right away, or trying to put in too much support. Ways that you can strategize so that you're still getting some respite and you're getting some. The person is getting some care, but you're not trying to push back on their rights. So
That's a big issue too. That's a big issue too. Okay.
yeah,
I'm
so
glad you brought that up.
yeah, so it can be, everybody's situation is unique, but that's why it is important for caregivers to have care, basically, because many times their voices are not heard. They're the person that's in the doctor's office and in the waiting room. They're the person that is trying to manage everything and being asked to do everything, and they don't get a voice. So that's what our program really tries to do, is to see where they're at and try to give them support.
Right. So this is one part of the program, and these people that you're dealing with are more on the local level, perhaps. But then you get calls. The caregiver might be here, but say their parent or grandparent is out of state, or on the other part of Massachusetts, so they're more than an hour away. That brings other issues to bear.
It does. So for our program eligibility, and again, this program exists in every state in the United States, and also in the territories of Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. So they actually, if the caregiver or the person they're care for live in the Merrimack Valley, I can work with them directly. Many times I've had a caregiver say that's been living in California and trying to get support for someone here. I can, go over the eligibility of what's available here, but also what's available in California and where to direct her to.
Right. So you're dealing with two systems in a case like that. Okay. Oh, bless you.
Excuse me. But then we do also try to connect them to their local area.
Right. Sometimes families think it will be easier if the elder moves locally where the family is. And maybe that will work for some families, but then the question is, well, what makes you think the elder even wants to move? Yes, they might need a lot of care, but maybe they don't want to move. Maybe they don't want to leave their neighborhood, their friends, their church, their hospital, their doctor, whoever. How do we deal with something like that?
So we do try to work with the caregiver to try and look at other supports that may be available in the person's area.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there's a lot to consider when you do try to bring someone to live with you, and especially if they really don't want to. You know, you do really want to look at what might be available for them in their area, and what supports are, you know, while it's feasible.
Right, right.
And then you know, if you can find a team or in support systems that are available, that's really going to be ideal to keep them in their own home as long as they're safe to do so.
Yeah.
But it's really doing a lot of research and education. I did bring with me today a book I use when I'm working with long-distance caregivers called So Far Away. So this is put out by the National Institute on Aging, and it does go over basically some tips, question and answer.
Right,
It's
right.
written, you know, with stories of other caregivers that have been through it.
Nice, right.
And one thing they said, when you are trying to research supports, it can be a little overwhelming again to go on the internet and see everything out there. And many
Right.
times when you put in caregiving or elder care, you're going to come up with all different kinds of
Right.
agencies.
Right.
So you do have to be careful. You want to look for things that may have .org or .gov to start out with, just so you get an idea of where, you know, what agency is really a nonprofit
Right.
or a government agency.
Right.
Because many private agencies, not that they're ill-intentioned, but they're a private pay agency, and they will be popping up
Okay.
when you're putting in elder care.
Right, right.
So
Okay, so being careful about the resources.
yes, and the research you do.
Right. And the government, the state and federal level, they have a lot of resources available. They really
do.
Because
They
I
do.
was doing some checking ahead of time too. So there is a lot there. to
There
look at,
is, there
you know?
is. But again, you want to just try to work with, you know, look at the website itself and to see if it looks, you know,
Right.
a legitimate. One part of when you're looking at online websites, if you go to their page of what they're about, that can explain a lot.
Okay, sure, sure. So mom or dad is living in Florida or Wisconsin or somewhere. So you're going to visit. You want to know what's going on. If you call them, sometimes they're not going to tell you what's going on. I
No.
don't want to bother you. I've heard that line. Okay, so the phone might be one way, but then you might want to make friends maybe with their friends where they're living, right? Something like that, because you want to. How are you going to get accurate information if you're, 500, 600 miles away or more?
So getting to know, if you can, their friends and neighbors
Right.
can be a big help, because then you can have a whole support team that's working
Support
with you.
team.
You know, and they'll be able, it's people that you can connect with, and it's not to really overwhelm your parents' life, but
Right.
it's really to see if if anything happens, could they be someone that could go over and check
Yeah,
on your
check.
mom or check on your dad.
Yeah.
When you are visiting, I'm glad you brought that up, there are some things you can look for to see if other things are going on. For instance,
Okay.
if there's a lot of old food in the refrigerator, how well they're eating. Check out the refrigerator to begin with,
Okay.
to see what's in there. If there is food in the refrigerator, check out, the pathways on how everything is set up. Are they really managing? If there's things that are really out of place that aren't normally the way
Right.
your parents lived,
Right.
that can be a sign that they may need some help.
something.
Yeah.
There used to be a Mrs. Clean, for example, and now you go and it's not only not Mrs. Clean, but there's clutter here and there, and that's not the way
Right,
they used to
exactly.
be. Things like that.
Exactly. And it may be that you want to try to see if you can go on a doctor's appointment with them.
Yes.
If you do suspect
Okay.
that some other issues are going on, particularly around memory loss. And it is hard to do when you're away, when you're living a
Right,
distance, but there are
right.
ways you can try to figure it out and connect with them.
Maybe if there's more than one sibling in the family, you can take turns doing the visits or I like the idea of going to the doctor's appointments. I mean, granted, the doctor might not want to talk with you because of
Right.
HIPAA and healthcare proxy issues and all of that, but becoming friendly with them so they know you're legitimate, you are real.
Right, and exactly, and they may, sometimes it may be that they do want to talk to you, and
Right.
there are forms you can have signed, these HIPAA releases,
Right.
and
Okay.
different states have different types of what they, for Massachusetts, we have a
Right.
healthcare proxy.
Right.
Other states may have other things. I know for New Hampshire, it's a durable medical power of attorney.
Right.
Those are
Right.
some forms that do come into place, even if you're a long distance caregiver. Say if your parents had to go in the hospital and they need a healthcare proxy,
Right.
they need to know who that person is going to be. So
Right.
if you are looking to do that when you're visiting, it's sometimes a good idea to put that in place or decide who it is going to be.
So planning your visits to make the best use of time sounds like an important thing to think about.
It is.
Okay.
And the other thing I would say about visits is to try to get on some kind of schedule with a visit, with the visits, because if you are suspect that your parents or your loved one needs more care, to be on a regular schedule to try and understand what's going on can be very helpful.
Right.
If at all possible. I mean, if you live a great distance, sometimes that's not possible.
Right.
But
In some cases, might hiring a local care manager or case manager help for someone like, say, between Massachusetts and, say, California,
exactly.
something like that.
So there are private agencies you
There's a
can
private,
hire, but then it's also, it may also be looking at to see whether your family member is eligible for some subsidized
right,
service
right,
as
okay.
well.
Right.
So
Oh my gosh.
there's a lot to
There's a
it.
lot to consider.
Yeah,
There's a lot to
yes.
consider. Suppose you are the only child in a family. Or, on the other hand, suppose you're one of 6 or 7 in a family, but everything falls on you. How do you try to engage other family members to help in this? You
So
know?
that is also something our program does.
Good,
We work, I do hold family meetings for people, and if not through the family caregiver support program, sometimes a private geriatric social
Yes.
worker can be key, or another place that people turn to bring family together to hold a family meeting, say, would be maybe if they have a local, if they belong to a church and there's a pastor
course.
or a priest that they,
Sure.
might be helpful.
Sure.
Or, it can be, one thing with large families and when there's more than one person that's involved, basically, it would be to try and get a space that everybody is heard. Because some people are not going to see things the same way. It may say,
Right.
but to have really good communication is going to be key, and it
Well,
hopefully can end up in a good.
but I can see where a
result.
program like yours would be helpful in helping to improve communication that maybe got poor over many years, maybe over many years. And things like that happen in families. And everybody thinks they know best. Okay? So a program like yours, and in every state there are programs like yours.
Yes.
That's the key for people to remember. So that there are going to be some ways to improve communication. And maybe you can enlist your brother who's good with numbers to take care of the checkbooks or something. And I don't know, it's off the top of my head. I'm thinking things like that.
Well, that was what works really well, is to say, not everybody is going to be comfortable doing some types of care. If there is someone in the family that's comfortable with doing the money management, then that, and is good at it, or if that's what's needed.
Right.
that would be the person to look for
Right,
there.
right,
And then
right.
if somebody else is, just like you said, wants to do the grocery shopping or wants to be the
Things
person
like
that,
that, yeah.
you know, takes mom to get her hair cut or hair done every week. It is, the more cooperation and communication you can have, it's going to benefit everybody.
Right.
It is still many times that it does fall mainly on one person,
Okay.
but through our program, it's still going to be important that that person have a voice and be
Have a
heard.
voice. Have a voice, and know that they're being heard. That they're being heard.
Exactly.
You know, it's sometimes people, it's very common. You think you're the only one going through something. So a program like yours and throughout the country helps them to know you're not the only one going through this. And there's a whole month established for this. There's a whole month established for this. You know?
Well, the other thing I would say to you, too, on this show, even when you're a long-distance caregiver, one thing that we really encourage caregivers to do is to check out a support group.
Okay.
Because just like you said, this can be very isolating. And there's many times that people feel like they're in a tunnel and there's no one else that understands what they're going through. So at least if you are able to connect with other people that are in that situation, it may not be exactly like yours, and sometimes it does mean checking out a few different groups to find one that works for you, but it really can be very helpful and supportive.
Right. The key is to not feel alone, it sounds like.
Exactly, because it's only, you know, by doing that, when you're a caregiver, you have to suppress so much, so when you're able to go to a support group, you can kind of vent and let it out, and people aren't going to judge you.
Sometimes people, women especially, I think, feel guilty that they're not doing enough. Need to work on that a little bit with women. I think women of a certain generation, I'm doing all of these things, but somehow it's not enough. How do you help that?
Well,
Please,
guilt,
how
I
do you help
think,
that?
I always tell people, with guilt is going to be there no matter what with caregiving. It's actually, you're guilty because you're the person that cares. And you are just trying to do so much, and that no matter what you do, there are going to be things that happen.
Right.
When you're caring for somebody that has an illness or has a chronic condition, or there's going to be times that you can't fix it. For the most part, you can't fix the disease.
Exactly.
So you do have to kind of look at guilt as something that has to be managed, and try to turn guilt into gratitude. Trying to say, you know, I have done, instead of saying I didn't do enough, saying I did my best. I've done my best, and this is what, and I love them so much.
And acknowledge that you've done your best. And you've done your best because you love.
Exactly.
Because you love.
Exactly.
You know?
So,
And remembering that, because in the helter-skelter of some of the days, it's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget that. The other piece of that is it's so easy to forget that we forget you have to help yourself too.
exactly.
You have to help yourself too.
So even whether you're caring for somebody on a daily basis or you're doing long distance caregiving, you still need respite. And it sounds funny maybe as a long distance caregiver that you're not right in that situation 24/7, but you're actually more times than not, people that are doing long distance caregiving are kind of leading two lives. They have their life at home with probably their own family and job and things going on for themselves. Then they're traveling, they're going on to a whole nother life or connecting with someone that's a distance away and trying to manage that life. You still need respite. You still need time that you're going to have to take for yourself. And whether you're doing daily caregiving or long distance caregiving or any type of caregiving, taking that break is actually a gift to the person you care for, because when you do that, you're able to come back and be in a better place for all of their needs.
Emphasize that a little bit more, because I think people feel, women especially, might feel selfish for taking a little time for themselves, not realizing that by doing that, you then have energy to give to your loved one.
Exactly.
Sometimes you don't make that connection.
Well, I think I always tell people it's actually as important as that person getting their medication, because they need positive energy from
Yeah,
you.
right.
They need positive, whether you know, if you're caring for somebody with memory loss, they need constant positive emotion.
Right.
But all types of caregiving, they actually need positive energy, because they're going through so much
Right.
anyways.
Right.
In order to do that, you have to be able to take care of yourself first. And I know it sounds cliche,
I know.
but it can be even in small moments. It doesn't always get to be the vacation.
Sure.
But if you can do that, that's great, and make arrangements for that, that's wonderful. But even on a daily basis, taking a walk, getting an extra cup of coffee, taking a few moments for yourself is going to be key.
Part of that has to do with if you're looking haggard or worn, the loved one is going to pick up on that. And sometimes they're going to feel like they're the burden. Don't want them to feel like they're the burden.
Right,
Okay?
that's true.
And it's not something you think about at the time. So taking care of yourself is not being selfish. It's actually being loving.
It is. They may not always be able to tell you that. You know,
Right,
they may
right.
always want their needs met first.
Sure.
But I would say, you know, it really is the gift that you can give to yourself, and it actually comes from them in a way. If they could say thank you, that would be it.
That would be nice for the person being cared for to say thank you for all
Right.
you're doing for me.
Right, exactly. And oftentimes that person can't do
They
that.
can't.
So
Right.
you taking respite,
Right.
you being able to have an afternoon lunch with your friends, or buying yourself flowers, or you know, I even for men, you know, I have many men that are caring for their wives, or caring for their mothers, or caring for their dads. They will do things. They will go golfing. They will.
We
You know,
we don't talk that much about men who are providing caregiving, but there is a large number
there are
of
a
men
lot
now.
of men that
There
are doing.
right? So we're
Yes.
not excluding you guys.
Exactly.
This applies around
For
everybody.
exactly.
Right. I want to thank you for coming, and I
Thank
want to.
you.
We've covered a lot of territory. Is there anything you think we might have omitted that you want to make sure we cover before we close up?
I would just say, you know, there are a lot of supports out there that you don't realize exist. If you want to, even on going on our website, we have a blog, and we have resources that are listed. There are different things that are available for caregivers that have never been around before. There's trainings, there's support groups, there's memory cafes.
Memory cafes, good.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and we do have a little bit of a resource list that people can look at, and I think yours is right on top, but it includes, it's not all inclusive, the other sites, but it all builds together to what's available for people. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming,
Lucia.
and thank you for watching. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.